lifting up Jesus, opening His Word from Australia, Denmark, Israel, Japan, New Zealand, Northern Ireland, Republic of Ireland, Singapore, South Africa, United Kingdom, Thailand, the Philippines, United States, and throughout the world. You're watching Moriel TV. This is Tim from Moriel TV and Moriel Radio, here live via Skype with James Jacob Prasch, who's actually near The Hague in Holland, and this is This Week in Prophecy.
This Week in Prophecy, blessings in Jesus, dear friends. Wonderful to be with you from Europe. Also taking place in Europe this week in Prophecy, however, is the annual Globalist Megafest of world leaders from government, business, industry, the academic world, media, etc., in Davos, Switzerland. And welcome. This was, of course, Donald Trump. Mr. Trump is known as an anti-globalist figure at a conference that has a solidly globalist agenda. His speech was classically, I will put America first, but he emphasized that America was open for business and stressed the benefits to foreign investment from Europe and Asia and elsewhere in light of American tax reform.
Please welcome the 45th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, to the stage.
Thank you, Klaus, very much. It's a privilege to be here at this forum where leaders in business, science, art, diplomacy, and world affairs have gathered for many, many years to discuss how we can advance prosperity, security, and peace. I'm here today to represent the interests of the American people and to affirm America's friendship and partnership in building a better world. Like all nations represented at this great forum, America hopes for a future in which everyone can prosper and every child can grow up free from violence, poverty, and fear. Over the past year, we have made extraordinary strides in the U.S. We're lifting up forgotten communities, creating exciting new opportunities, and helping every American find their path to the American dream, the dream of a great job, a safe home, and a better life for their children. After years of stagnation, the United States is once again experiencing strong economic growth. The stock market is smashing one record after another and has added more than $7 trillion in new wealth since my election. Consumer confidence, business confidence, and manufacturing confidence are the highest they have been in many decades. Since my election, we've created 2.4 million jobs, and that number is going up very, very substantially. Small business optimism is at an all-time high. New unemployment claims are near the lowest we've seen in almost half a century. African American unemployment has reached the lowest rate ever recorded in the United States, and so has unemployment among Hispanic Americans. The world is witnessing the resurgence of a strong and prosperous America. I'm here to deliver a simple message. There has never been a better time to hire, to build, to invest, and to grow in the United States. America is open for business, and we are competitive once again. The American economy is by far the largest in the world, and we've just enacted the most significant tax cuts and reform in American history. We've massively cut taxes for the middle class and small businesses to let working families keep more of their hard-earned money. We lowered our corporate tax rate from 35% all the way down to 21%. As a result, millions of workers have received tax cut bonuses from their employers in amounts as large as $3,000. The tax cut bill is expected to raise the average American's household income by more than $4,000. The world's largest company, Apple, announced it plans to bring $245 billion in overseas profits home to America. Their total investment into the United States economy will be more than $350 billion over the next 5 years. Now is the perfect time to bring your business, your jobs, and your investments to the United States. This is especially true because we have undertaken the most extensive regulatory reduction ever conceived. Regulation is stealth taxation. The U.S., like many other countries, unelected bureaucrats, and we have, believe me, we have them all over the place, and they've imposed crushing and anti-business and anti-worker regulations on our citizens with no vote, no legislative debate, and no real accountability. In America, those days are over. I pledged to eliminate 2 unnecessary regulations for every 1 new regulation. We have succeeded beyond our highest expectations. Instead of 2 for 1, we have cut 22 burdensome regulations for every 1 new rule. We are freeing our businesses and workers so they can thrive and flourish as never before. We are creating an environment that attracts capital, invites investment, and rewards production. America is the place to do business. So come to America, where you can innovate, create, and build. I believe in America. As President of the United States, I will always put America first, just like the leaders of other countries should put their country first also. But America first does not mean America alone. When the United States grows, so does the world. American prosperity has created countless jobs all around the globe, and the drive for excellence, creativity, and innovation in the U.S. has led to important discoveries that help people everywhere live more prosperous and far healthier lives. As the United States pursues domestic reforms to unleash jobs and growth, we are also working to reform the international trading system so that it promotes broadly shared prosperity and rewards to those who play by the rules. We cannot have free and open trade if some countries exploit the system at the expense of others. We support free trade, but it needs to be fair and it needs to be reciprocal, because in the end, unfair trade undermines us all. The United States will no longer turn a blind eye to unfair economic practices, including massive intellectual property theft, industrial subsidies, and pervasive state-led economic planning. These and other predatory behaviors are distorting the global markets and harming businesses and workers, not just in the U.S., but around the globe. Just like we expect the leaders of other countries to protect their interests, as President of the United States, I will always protect the interests of our country, our companies, and our workers. We will enforce our trade laws and restore integrity to our trading system. Only by insisting on fair and reciprocal trade can we create a system that works not just for the U.S., but for all nations. As I have said, the United States is prepared to negotiate mutually beneficial bilateral trade agreements with all countries. This will include the countries in TPP, which are very important. We have agreements with several of them already. We would consider negotiating with the rest, either individually or perhaps as a group, if it is in the interests of all. My administration is also taking swift action in other ways to restore American confidence and independence. We are lifting self-imposed restrictions on energy production to provide affordable power to our citizens and businesses and to promote energy security for our friends all around the world. No country should be held hostage to a single provider of energy. America is roaring back, and now is the time to invest in the future of America. We have dramatically cut taxes to make America competitive. We are eliminating burdensome regulations at a record pace. We are reforming the bureaucracy to make it lean, responsive, and accountable, and we are ensuring our laws are enforced fairly. We have the best colleges and universities in the world, and we have the best workers in the world. Energy is abundant and affordable. There has never been a better time to do business in America. We are also making historic investments in the American military because we cannot have prosperity without security. To make the world safer from rogue regimes, terrorism, and revisionist powers, we are asking our friends and allies to invest in their own defenses and to meet their financial obligations. Our common security requires everyone to contribute their fair share. My administration is proud to have led historic efforts at the United Nations Security Council and all around the world to unite all civilized nations in our campaign of maximum pressure to denuke the Korean Peninsula. We continue to call on partners to confront Iran's support for terrorists and block Iran's path to a nuclear weapon. We're also working with allies and partners to destroy jihadist terrorist organizations such as ISIS, and very successfully so. The United States is leading a very broad coalition to deny terrorists control of their territory and populations, to cut off their funding, and to discredit their wicked ideology. I am pleased to report that the coalition to defeat ISIS has retaken almost 100% of the territory once held by these killers in Iraq and Syria. There is still more fighting and work to be done and to consolidate our gains. We are committed to ensuring that Afghanistan never again becomes a safe haven for terrorists who want to commit mass murder to our civilian populations. I want to thank those nations represented here today that have joined in these crucial efforts. You are not just securing your own citizens, but saving lives and restoring hope for millions and millions of people. When it comes to terrorism, we will do whatever is necessary to protect our nation. We will defend our citizens and our borders. We are also securing our immigration system as a matter of both national and economic security. America is a cutting-edge economy, but our immigration system is stuck in the past. We must replace our current system of extended family chain migration with a merit-based system of admissions that selects new arrivals based on their ability to contribute to our economy, to support themselves financially, and to strengthen our country. In rebuilding America, we are also fully committed to developing our workforce. We are lifting people from dependence to independence because we know the single best anti-poverty program is a very simple and very beautiful paycheck. To be successful, it is not enough to invest in our economy. We must invest in our people. When people are forgotten, the world becomes fractured. Only by hearing and responding to the voices of the forgotten can we create a bright future that is truly shared by all. The nation's greatness is more than the sum of its production. A nation's greatness is the sum of its citizens, the values, pride, love, devotion, and character of the people who call that nation home. From my first international G7 summit, to the G20, to the UN General Assembly, to APEC, to the World Trade Organization, and today at the World Economic Forum, my administration has not only been present, but has driven our message that we are all stronger when free, sovereign nations cooperate toward shared goals, and they cooperate toward shared dreams. Represented in this room are some of the remarkable citizens from all over the world. You are national leaders, business titans, industry giants, and many of the brightest minds in many fields. Each of you has the power to change hearts, transform lives, and shape your country's destinies. With this power comes an obligation, however, a duty of loyalty to the people, workers, and customers who have made you who you are. So together, let us resolve to use our power, our resources, and our voices, not just for ourselves, but for our people, to lift their burdens, to raise their hopes, and to empower their dreams, to protect their families, their communities, their histories, and their futures. That's what we're doing in America, and the results are totally unmistakable. It's why new businesses and investment are flooding in. It's why our unemployment rate is the lowest it's been in so many decades. It's why America's future has never been brighter. Today, I am inviting all of you to become part of this incredible future we are building together. Thank you to our hosts. Thank you to the leaders and innovators in the audience. But most importantly, thank you to all of the hardworking men and women who do their duty each and every day, making this a better world for everyone. Together, let us send our love and our gratitude to make them, because they really make our countries run. They make our countries great. Thank you, and God bless you all. Thank you very much.
A number of companies already, including Total, the French oil company, which is a very huge company in Europe, has said it is going to increase its capital investment in the United States due to the economic and tax reforms of the Trump administration already. Other events have taken place in Davos concerning Mr. Trump as well. He has said that statements made by the Treasury Secretary concerning the weak dollar were misunderstood and probably had more to do with competition against Asian countries, particularly China, that manipulate their currency to increase exports at the expense of fair trade.
After years of economic growth, China's renminbi currency, also called the yuan, has been added to the list of the elite global currencies by the International Monetary Fund. Alongside the dollar, euro, pound, and Japanese yen, the renminbi is officially recognized by the IMF to be safe, reliable, and freely usable. However, despite this designation, China has been known to practice currency manipulation in an effort to influence the value of the yuan. So what does that mean exactly? How does China manipulate its currency? Basically, currency manipulation is the way countries attempt to avoid the negative market effects of having a strong currency. The value of a currency is essentially dependent on how much or how little it is used, which in turn is dependent on how strong a country's trade balance is. When China has a trade surplus, people in other countries basically have to buy Chinese currency in order to buy Chinese goods. With an increase in demand, the price or value of the currency also goes up. However, as currencies get stronger, it becomes more expensive to purchase goods. Other cheaper currencies become more advantageous to spend. In a way, currency itself can be viewed as a product whose price is based on demand. As China has seen rapid and intense economic growth, they've attempted to stem the inevitable devaluation of their currency as their trade surplus grows. This is done through currency manipulation, which is when one currency is used to buy huge amounts of foreign currency. That makes it possible to prevent the currency from gaining too much value while also bolstering other currencies as well and keeping them from becoming too competitively cheap. So how does this work in action? According to Economic Policy Institute, China spent $500 billion in 2013 alone purchasing foreign currencies. This was likely to prevent the value of the yuan from making manufacturing in China less profitable, while attempting to cheapen the US dollar. This type of manipulation around the world is thought to cost the US between 2.3 and 5.8 million jobs, as well as hundreds of billions in trade deficit. Like all trade relations, currency manipulation is an inherently self-serving and competitive move by many countries, although China is considered the biggest offender. In August 2015, they devalued their currency by nearly 2% against the US dollar, forcing China's trade balance to favor exports over imports. It also shook global markets and was the country's biggest one-day drop in 20 years. However, both the devaluation and the IMF designation mean that the yuan is now less controlled by the Chinese government. As the currency sees greater scrutiny as an elite global medium, market forces will likely overpower manipulation. But in the end, China may have gotten what it wanted anyway, as the yuan now holds greater weight than either the pound or the Japanese yen. Although it has far to go before rivaling the dollar, its growth seems inevitable. China's currency might have a huge impact on economies around the world. So how dependent is the world economy on China? Find out in our video here.
Due to China's shrinking demand for auto exports, Japan is experiencing a continued economic slump. China's construction sector is also on the decline, leading to less trade with Australia, a significant source of raw materials.
Mr. Trump committed his administration to the preservation of a stronger dollar over a period of time that sent dollar rates ascending. He also met with Benjamin Netanyahu House.
We have discussions going with Israel on many things, including trade. But the big move, and something that was very historic and very important, was the fact that we will be moving our embassy, as you know, to Jerusalem. And as we also know, that is way ahead of schedule by years. And we anticipate having a small version of it opened sometime next year.
People say that this pushes peace backward. I say it pushes peace forward because it recognizes history, it recognizes the present reality, and peace can only be built on the basis of truth. By recognizing history, you've made history. And we will always remember that.
What I did with Jerusalem was my honor. And hopefully we can do something with peace. I would love to see it.
We also support you completely and your stalwart position on the Iran nuclear deal. You said it's a disastrous deal. You said that if its fatal flaws are not fixed, you should walk away from it. And I want you to know that if you decide to do that, then we will back you all the way.
I will say that the hardest subject they had to talk about was Jerusalem. We took Jerusalem off the table, so we don't have to talk about it anymore. They never got past Jerusalem. We took it off the table. We don't have to talk about it anymore. You won 1 point, and you'll give up some points later on the negotiation, if it ever takes place. I don't know that it ever will take place. But they have to respect the process.
Continuing to fund the Palestinian Authority contingent upon they're willing to be honest negotiators at the peace table, which they presently are not. Mr. Trump has already cut certain funding for the United Nations Work and Relief Agency, established of so-called Palestinian refugees. Now, this evolved to something way out of proportion to what it was ever intended to be already. The 700,000 so-called Palestinian refugees were not driven out by Israel. They were largely people who left Israel at the behest of the United Arab Command in 1948, told the Arab population to leave, and we will push the Jews into the sea. Some Arabs stayed. Israelis created no Palestinian refugees, or at least very few. They left. But even the ones who left were 700,000. The Israeli National Police were informed of the outcome of criminal investigations alleged. Mr. Netanyahu's conduct in terms of acceptance of gifts alleged to be bribes. Attorney General Avihai Mandelblit notified the Israeli police that there is no evidence of graft or bribe paying to Mr. Netanyahu. There will be no indictment, no prosecution. Again, politically motivated prosecutions are not unique to the United States. The Israeli left have attempted to perpetrate the same things against Mr. Netanyahu as we see taking place in the United States, howbeit for different trumped-up charges. But they were laid to waste this week by the Israeli Justice Ministry. It is simply not going to happen this week in prophecy. Good news for Mr. Netanyahu. Now, on the American counterpart of that, there is bad news for the FBI leadership and questions surrounding Special Prosecutor Mr. Mueller.
Just now is investigative reporter and Fox News contributor. We have Sarah Carter, also Greg Jarrett, Fox News legal analyst, Congressman Matt Gaetz. All right, let's talk about your... Well, you got a quote today in your article. Tell everybody. This is amazing.
Oh, yeah. First of all, members of the FBI, like we've said before, Sean, these are good people. These are people who want the truth out. And former senior FBI officials as well as current FBI officials do not believe that this was just a technical glitch. I can't even use the language that they shared with me when they heard the news come out. Something that they did bring up that I think is really important to get out to the audience is they said that a lot of these text messages were done on these unsecure Samsung 5, phones.
Glitch.
Yeah, the glitch. So it wasn't just about capturing it in U.S. servers, but they said foreign actors such as Israel even, Germany, Russia, China, and others try to capture FBI cell phones all the time. So it may be that a foreign actor actually has the text messages between...
you mean Vladimir might have it after all?
Somebody else may have it after all. And they talked about Flynn being the subject of blackmail. What about them being the subject of blackmail?
I have people, I don't want to mention their names, they didn't give me permission, but are telling me Samsung phones don't have point-to-point encryption or iMessage,
right.
And that those text messages are retrievable through the carrier. Now, they may have been gone at some point, but certainly they would have a time and date stamp, wouldn't they?
They would. If the evidence was actually destroyed, it may have been obtained first before it was destroyed by the Inspector General, Michael Horowitz. And there's some indication, Ed Henry is reporting this, that that is the case. If so, we will invariably get to the bottom of destruction of evidence and obstruction of justice.
Matt Gaetz, Congressman, we've got our 18.5 minutes of missing tape here, if you will, but this is far worse than Watergate. Explain why you believe so, because you went over to see the memo that we deserve to see.
Well, absolutely, Sean, and thank you so much for the leadership you've provided in encouraging the American people to demand the release of this memo. It is no longer disputable that a pro-Hillary Clinton, anti-Donald Trump bias has intractably infected the FBI, and the United States of America is in jeopardy as a consequence. And, Sean, you laid out a great timeline, but there are even more damaging facts to come. I know that's hard to believe, but trust me, around the corner, we're going to be learning even more about how how infected this investigation is, particularly the Mueller probe. Just look at this. In August, you had Strzok and Page saying they were going to be the insurance policy. They were going to save America from a Trump presidency.
How much worse, and how you got to bring us into your world here? How?
Well, Sean, I can say this. Wait till you overlay this 5 months of dark period with the memo that we want to release. These are not isolated incidents that are separated from one another. You have to evaluate these things together.
Do you believe they're missing? Because I don't buy it. After Lois Lerner, after Hillary Clinton, bleach pit, acid wash, hammering devices, I don't buy it. Debbie Wasserman Schultz smashed hard drives. This is bull.
The American people are never going to believe that 2 days after Barack Obama sicked the intelligence community on President Trump, that all of a sudden these text messages went dark, and then they just happened to reappear and come alive the day after Robert Mueller is selected to be the special counsel. It would be the coincidence of all coincidences.
All right, Sarah, you tie this together with what Congressman Gates was just saying. You see a connection.
Oh, absolutely. Congressman Gates brings up several really important points. And according to the people that I've spoken with, you know, this went back to 2015. These text messages were supposed to be stored, and they should be stored. The fact that those 5 months, the most important 5 months of the investigation, are missing is highly concerning. And FBI agents, law enforcement, U.S. intelligence officials say they believe that these text messages will be retrieved. And Greg, you made a very good point. If Horowitz did get those text messages without them knowing, and they withdrew, they went in and somehow tried to clean it up. Look, they would have to go to their records management system at the FBI. They would have to have somebody in there help them clean this up.
Let's talk about the legal aspects of what we're looking at here, and what does the Loretta Lynch component say to you?
It says to me the fix was in, as you described it in your monologue, which is obstruction of justice. And if a false document was used to not only launch the Trump-Russian investigation, but to spy on Trump associates, that's a violation of the law. It's abuse of power. It's called deprivation of rights under color of law, 22 U.S.C. 242, 18 U.S.C. And people should go to jail. The penalty is 10 years behind bars, and it increasingly looks like this was a widespread, nefarious, and illegal plot to frame Donald Trump and clear Hillary Clinton.
All right. Thank you all for your hard work.
Let us pray that justice will be served and that criminals will be brought to justice. This week in prophecy, this goes on. We've been warning there is a spiritual battle concerning Mr. Trump and his presidency. The Democratic Party, Mr. Schumer, have, of course, backed down with apparent egg on their face concerning the government shutdown. But we have no doubt that the prayers of many Christians have been a determining factor in the outcome of these events. But the battle goes on, and so does the need for prayer. Again, we're not solidly in the corner of Mr. Trump or of any other politician or political party. We do not lobby politically. We are on the side of truth and justice and Judeo-Christian principles being applied to government and the economy. But let us move on. This week in prophecy, it was announced that in the first year of the Trump administration, USA homicide rates have plunged significantly after having escalated significantly during the tenure of Barack Obama's 2 terms of office. They are down, and they are continuing to go down, although they remain very high in certain cities with left-wing Democrat governments, such as Rahm Emanuel, Chicago, and Baltimore. Again, this is simply the statistical reality. This week in prophecy, it was alleged in newspapers in Israel and in the United States that former Secretary of State John Kerry met with representatives of the Palestinian Authority, telling them to tell Mr. Abbas to attack Mr. Trump personally, not the USA or not even the Trump administration, but to attack Mr. Trump personally, and to hang on until a new administration can come to replace Mr. Trump.
President Trump issues a warning to Turkey, urging President Erdogan to be mindful of military actions in Syria that could spark a conflict between Turkish and American forces.
Well, President Erdogan, we understand your legitimate security concerns on your southern border, and we're going to work with you very closely to get through those concerns. But we also hope that you can see the longer-term strategic goals of having a peaceable Syria and not escalating any violence in northwestern Syria, and then helping the allied forces and the coalition against ISIS to gain better insight and vision into that part of Syria so that we can make better security assessments.
But Turkish officials dispute that President Trump voiced concerns about escalating violence. Joining me now, Ariel Cohen, a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council. Ariel, we have seen U.S.-Turkish relations go up and go down. How would you assess them at this moment in time?
We're at the lowest point in decades. There were periods when U.S. Imposed embargo on supply of weapons to Turkey when there were massive violations of human rights. But basically, we're facing a situation where Turkey, Russia, Syria, and Iran are coordinating policy and making the U.S. and our allies, the Kurds, more isolated. In the long term, what the Pentagon is saying is that we need a force in Syria to counter Iran. The Iranians are the real winners of the war in Syria. We did a lot of field work. We did a lot of heavy lifting, destroying ISIS, making Syria safe for Assad. This is exactly the opposite of what happened, the opposite of what the Obama administration wanted. They wanted to get rid of Assad and didn't do anything. Turkey now is targeting their traditional enemy, the Kurds. We are supporting the Kurds because the Kurds were our heavy lifters in the war against us.
That's exactly the point I was going to make. The Kurds have done so much to help the United States against ISIS, which obviously declared a war on the United States, helped wipe out ISIS essentially in Syria, and now their thank you is to come under attack from the Turkish government?
It is a little bit even more complicated than that because YPG, the forces that the Turks are attacking in Syria, are connected to PKK, which is a terrorist organization, and we recognize PKK as a terrorist organization. But PKK is involved inside Turkey, YPG is in Syria. But beyond that, what is happening today is for the first time, the Turks are directly attacking American allies with the Air Force, with field artillery. I saw 155 millimeter field artillery in the footage you just showed. So this is bad news. We need to talk to the Turks. Turkey, remember, is our NATO ally, but they talk and they behave like they were not. For example, they're buying massive Russian anti-aircraft complex called S-400, one of the top-of-the-line missiles, but they're buying it from the Russians and not from a NATO member, and certainly not from the United States.
A NATO country shopping for arms with the Russians. That is pretty outrageous. Ariel Cohen, we have to leave it there. Thanks very much for your insights this morning.
Pleasure.
Allegedly saying that Mr. Trump's administration, at least his tenure as president, will be over in a year, and that Mr. Kerry himself was intending to run for president in the next presidential election. This would be a violation of the Logan Act. It would be an indictable offense if it is true. Mr. Kerry or spokesmen for Mr. Kerry have thus far denied it. They said he has not said these things. They were not the content of this conversation, and they do not reflect his personal position. Israeli ambassador to the United States, Danny Danon, has informed Pentagon and CIA officials and the State Department that Israel estimates 82,000 fighters controlled from Iran presently in Syria alone. These include 3,000 members of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, 10,000 members of Hezbollah, funded and armed by Syria and by Iran, and transferred from Lebanon into Syria, but controlled by Iran. That is a substantial military presence in Syria controlled by Iran. We've been saying, watch what happens with Iran, watch what happens with Russia, and watch what happens with Turkey. Next week, Benjamin Netanyahu is scheduled to meet in Moscow with Vladimir Putin to discuss the situation in Syria, including Russian involvement with the forces of Assad and Iran. We'll be reporting further on this, Lord willing, next week. Mahmoud Abbas, angered still by the relocation of the American embassy to Jerusalem, has tried to disenfranchise or disinclude the United States, because of the Trump administration, from any role as a peace broker in Middle East peace talks, turning instead to the European Union. In Brussels, however, his proposal was slammed down by the European Union, who told him that no peace process can go forward without the participation of the United States. It is also an admission by Europe of their own incapacity to play a major role on the diplomatic stage. If a radical Islamic regime, more radical than the one they already have, comes to power in Pakistan, these are jihadists. It has been established that in a post-referendum world, Iraqi Kurds are in isolation and are largely demoralized. The seizing of the city of Kirkuk by militias in league with the Iraqi government has halved their revenue and income. At the same time, they're under attack increasingly from Turkey. Turkey has announced this week in prophecy that its actions in the Afrin region of northern Syria along the Turkish border against the Kurdish population, who they accuse of supporting Turkish separatist movements inside of Turkey, is going to be expanded to a land force pushing east towards the city of Manjib. In Manjib is a Kurdish force supported by American ground troops and advisors. This raises the actual possibility of a military confrontation between the United States and Turkey. That is correct, between the United States and Turkey. The Trump administration has warned the Erdogan government. The Erdogan government, in turn, claims it has warned the Trump administration. We have been warning people what Erdogan is. He's not loved in the Arab world, but it's the only card he has to play, so he plays the card of Islamic nationalism, not simply domestically, but externally. There are 20 million Kurds in Turkey, Syria, Iraq, and Iran, a national people with a national homeland, but no nation of their own. They have oil, but they have no ports. They're landlocked. They've proven themselves consistently, as we've repeatedly pointed out, to be the only force in Iraq that the United States and its NATO allies can really trust. But now the confrontation with Syria that began with aerial and artillery bombardment has resulted of actual ground troops on the Syrian side of the border. This is highly problematic for the United States. We do ask people to pray against the Erdogan regime.
After an aerial onslaught, Turkey is set to add ground forces to its new assault on Kurdish fighters over its border in northern Syria. Ankara considers the US-backed YPG militia an extension of the outlawed PKK, which has long waged an insurgency in southeast Turkey. The strikes in Afrin province, which the YPG says have killed at least 6 civilians, could worsen strains with Washington. US plans to set up a border force inside Syria to protect territory held by its mainly Kurdish allies have outraged NATO ally Turkey. Its Prime Minister said that apart from the Turkish armed forces, there are components of the Free Syrian Army participating. Free Syrian Army rebels travelled to the Turkish-Syrian border in armed pickup trucks for the operation dubbed Olive Branch by Ankara. But as they geared up for action, the Syrian government, which has threatened to shoot down Turkish planes, condemned the strikes. It called the attacks brutal Turkish aggression.
They've been hurt by the Iranian Shias. They've been hurt by the Arab Shias. They've been hurt by the Turkish Sunnis. They've been hurt by everybody among their so-called fellow Muslims. They do not have an inherent hostility against the Jews by and large, or against Israel. And they tend to be pro-Western and somewhat more cultured and educated than the other nations that surround them, or the other people groups that surround them. There is a real opportunity for the expansion of the gospel among the Kurdish people. Again, their forebearer, Darius the Mede, was a friend of Israel, who did Israel much good. And when we see things taking place involving Turkey, the ancient land of the Hittites and so forth, the question always surfaces: does this, or how does this, relate to a possible Gog and Magog scenario? We cannot be dogmatic. In any event, my name is James Jacob Prasch, coming to you from Holland. God bless, and thank you so much for listening. Please visit our website, Moriel.org. We'd love to have you visit us. God bless.